Is Elon Musk the right person for that job, given his billions of dollars in contracts with the Defense Department? How can he cut an agency where he has billions of dollars at stake?
Well, look, with all of the appropriate firewalls will be in place, but I'll tell you, as someone who used to have Cape Canaveral in my district, the president created the Space Force, and in 2018, the Chinese launched more than us and the rest of the world combined. Now, in just this last year, SpaceX has launched more than the rest of the world combined, has transformed, along with the president's directive to transform space. But if you want to sit that aside, that's fine, because there is plenty to look into in shipbuilding, which is an absolute mess, to look into contracting, into procurement, and in many of these cases where you pay people right up front and then they don't deliver for years and years and years, where maintenance and costs overrun, where facilities have literally feces and mold and cockroaches in them for our barracks and our soldiers. We need all the efficiency we can get in the Pentagon, and I think the American people and the soldiers will welcome it.
We have a fair amount more to get to. Let's go to Gaza now. President Trump suggesting the U.S. would take over Gaza. And then he walked back saying U.S. troops are not going to be on the ground. Let me ask you, Colonel, what is the White House's plan for who will control Gaza once the war is over?
Well, right now, the IDF is the Israeli Defense Forces have had to go in and will continue to destroy Hamas if they do not honor the terms of this ceasefire. So that's point one. Point two, President Trump looks at this in very practical terms, in the sense of, are we going to repeat the definition of insanity here and pour billions in, rebuild, and just have another October 7th again and another war years from now? Let's look at the reality of having 1.8 million people sitting in piles of rubble with no sewage, with unexploded ordnance, and he's asking in a humane way, what is going to happen to these people? And everyone around the region says their heart breaks for the Palestinians, rightly so. But then come to the table with your plan if you don't like his plan. And interestingly, we are seeing all kinds of outreach since the president made that statement of saying, let's help you take this on. And so those conversations are ongoing right now.
Okay, so having conversations with other world leaders about potentially being a part of that post-construction effort once the world war is over. Let me ask you this: does the U.S.
But the key piece is you can't get to post-construction. You can't make this the Paris of the Mediterranean like Beirut was back in the 70s and give these people a better life if you've got 1.8 million people living in absolute squalor in mountains and mountains and mountains of debris. It's just President Trump is a builder. He's a deal maker in chief, and he understands that this is it just doesn't make sense. So for anyone, the media included, that doesn't like what he is proposing, come to us with a better plan.
Rapid fire final round, if I could. Let's talk about Canada. In a closed-door meeting with business leaders, outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau warned that President Trump is serious about annexing Canada to make it the 51st state. Is he right? Is President Trump serious about planning to annex Canada?
Look, I think the Canadian people many of them would love to join the United States with no tariffs, with lower taxes. And I have all kinds of neighbors down in Florida that are Canadians that are escaping many of the liberal policies and have moved in. But look, what we're talking about
yes
here
or
is
no? First of all, I think some Canadians would disagree with you.
In the Western Hemisphere?
I think some Canadians would disagree with you. But just yes or no, is he planning to annex
part
Canada?
Of his policy. Well, I don't think there's any plans to invade Canada, if that's what you're talking about. But there is a lot of people that like what we have in the United States and do not like the last 10 years of liberal progressive governance in Trudeau. But really what you're seeing is a reassertion of American leadership in the Western Hemisphere, from the Arctic all the way down to the Panama Canal. And that's what we're talking about, from Greenland to Arctic security, to the Panama Canal coming back under the United States. America has avoided our own hemisphere where we have the energy, the food, and the critical minerals for way too long, and you're seeing a reassertion of President Trump's leadership.
The New York Post is reporting that President Trump says that he spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Colonel, when did that phone call take place? Was it after the president was elected, and what was his message to Putin?
Well, I'm not going to get ahead of the president, and there are certainly a lot of sensitive conversations going on. We will have our Secretary of State, our Secretary of Defense, our Vice President, our Special Envoy in Europe this week, talking through the details of how to end this war. And that means getting both sides of the table. What he has said is Russia's economy is not doing well. He is prepared to tax, to tariff, to sanction. We need to get all sides of the table and end this war. And it has come up in conversations with President Xi, with Prime Minister Modi, with leaders across the Middle East. Everybody is ready to help President Trump end this war. Let's get all sides of the table and negotiate.
Colonel, you've talked about every other world leader the White House has. Can you just say yes or no? Has he spoken to Putin, and are those sanctions coming potentially this week?
I'm not going to get into details, but the president's prepared to put all of those issues on the table this week, including the future of U.S. aid to Ukraine. We need to recoup those costs, and that is going to be a partnership with the Ukrainians in terms of their rare earths, their natural resources, and their oil and gas, and also buying ours. Those conversations are going to happen this week, and I think an underlying principle here is that the Europeans have to own this conflict going forward. President Trump is going to end it. And then in terms of security guarantees, that is squarely going to be with the Europeans.
We're way out of time, but who do you like for the Super Bowl tonight, Colonel?
The Jacksonville Jaguars, but we had a really tough year.
All right, well, maybe next year. National Security Advisor Mike Walz, thank you so much for joining us. We covered a lot of ground. Really appreciate it. And when we come back, Democratic Senator